The pioneer of the comparative advantage trade theory was the British economist David Ricardo, who articulated it in his 1817 book on the principles of political economy and taxation. Here's an intuitive explanation of the theory. Core idea. Imagine two friends, Alice and Bob, who can both bake cookies and knit scarves. Alice is faster and better at both tasks than Bob. It might seem like Alice should just do everything herself and not bother with Bob. However, the theory of comparative advantage says that even in this situation, they can both benefit from specializing and trading. The key is to look at the opportunity cost of their time. Opportunity cost is what you give up to do something else. Let's say, to bake one batch of cookies, Alice takes 1 hour and Bob takes 2 hours. To knit one scarf, Alice takes 2 hours and Bob takes 3 hours. Alice has an absolute advantage in both activities because she takes less time for each. Now let's think about the opportunity cost. For Alice, baking one batch of cookies costs her half a scarf, because in that 1 hour she could have knitted half a scarf. Knitting one scarf costs her 2 batches of cookies. For Bob, baking one batch of cookies costs him 2/3 of a scarf. In 2 hours he could have knitted 2/3 of a scarf. Knitting one scarf costs him 1.5 batches of cookies. Notice something interesting. Alice has a lower opportunity cost for baking cookies, 0.5 scarf versus Bob's 0.67 scarf. This means she gives up less scarf production to bake cookies. So Alice has a comparative advantage in baking cookies. Bob has a lower opportunity cost for knitting scarves, 1.5 batches of cookies versus Alice's 2 batches. This means he gives up less cookie production to knit scarves. So, Bob has a comparative advantage in knitting scarves. The theory suggests that Alice should specialize in baking cookies, where she is relatively more efficient, and Bob should specialize in knitting scarves, where he is relatively less inefficient. If they then trade, Alice can get scarves at a lower cost, in terms of cookies given up, than if she knitted them herself, and Bob can get cookies at a lower cost, in terms of scarves given up, than if he baked them himself. This leads to both of them having more cookies and scarves than if they tried to be self-sufficient. Key features. Focus on opportunity cost. The theory emphasizes the relative cost of producing goods in terms of what is foregone, rather than the absolute cost of production. Comparative, not absolute advantage. Trade benefits arise even if one country or individual has an absolute advantage in producing all goods. What matters is the relative efficiency. Specialization. Countries or individuals should specialize in producing goods and services where they have a comparative advantage. Gains from trade. Through specialization and trade, overall production and consumption in both trading partners can increase. Efficiency. It leads to a more efficient allocation of global resources, as each country focuses on what it can produce relatively cheaply. 2 or more parties and goods. The basic model usually involves at least 2 countries or individuals and 2 goods to illustrate the concept. Examples. Country A, efficient in both, can produce either 10 cars or 30 tons of wheat with its resources. Country B, less efficient in both, can produce either 5 cars or 10 tons of wheat with the same amount of resources. Opportunity cost of 1 car in country A equals 3 tons of wheat. Opportunity cost of 1 ton of wheat in country A equals 1/3 of a car. Opportunity cost of 1 car in country B equals 2 tons of wheat. Opportunity cost of 1 ton of wheat in country B equals 1/2 of a car. Country A has a comparative advantage in cars. Lower opportunity cost of 3 versus 2 tons of wheat. Country B has a comparative advantage in wheat. Lower opportunity cost of 0.5 vs 0.33 of a cars. Both countries can benefit by specializing and trading. Real-world examples. China and the US. China might have a comparative advantage in labor-intensive manufactured goods due to its large labor force, while the US might have a comparative advantage in technology-intensive goods or agricultural products due to its skilled workforce and advanced technology/land. Coffee and bananas. A country with a climate suitable for growing coffee might have a comparative advantage in coffee production, while a country with a tropical climate might have a comparative advantage in banana production. In essence, the theory of comparative advantage provides a powerful and intuitive explanation for why international trade is beneficial, even when countries have different levels of efficiency in producing various goods. It highlights the importance of relative costs and specialization in maximizing global output and consumption.